everyone. Thank you so much for coming. I really appreciate this. I hope you get a lot out of tonight. I would like to, tonight we're talking about the Tao of creativity. But first I want to give you just a little bit of background information on me, just so you know who I am. My name is Bobbie Oliver. I am a stand-up comedian. I didn't look down just to say that I was a stand-up comedian. What am I? My name is Bobbie Oliver. I'm a stand-up comedian. I own Tao Comedy Studio in Los Angeles. I wrote this book called The Tao of Comedy, Embrace the Pause. I have bachelor's degrees in speech communications and theater. I have an AA in psychology, and I have a master's degree in public administration. I've been a stand-up comedian for 26 years, and I've been doing comedy workshops for about 10 years now. So that's who I am now. But who was I? I am from one of the poorest cities in the poorest parts of the country. I was born and raised in a trailer park in Covington, Georgia. There were 7 of us in a 2-bedroom, 1-bathroom trailer. I shared a bed with my sister in the laundry room. I'm the first person in my family to go to college. Most of the people in my family didn't even graduate from high school. My family is very familiar with drug addiction and mental illness and problems with the law. Every woman in my family got pregnant in her teens. So when I was 16 years old, I was in a drug rehab / mental institution, and my life was pretty much going nowhere, as predicted. And then in high school, the theater, the high school curriculum forced me to take an introduction to theater class. And I was immediately hooked. I had found art. I had found a way to express myself. And in that, something in myself that I didn't even know was there. And so it occurred to me that maybe I could start doing different things and getting different results. Maybe I could do something different than everybody in my family and everybody in my town, and maybe it might turn out a different way. So I went to college on a theater scholarship and a lot of part-time jobs, and my parents helped out when they could. And while I was there studying theater, I decided I wanted to try my long-lasting love and fascination, stand-up comedy. Thank you, Johnny Carson. Some of you are old enough to know who that is. And I did. And I didn't know what I was doing, and none of the clubs in Atlanta would let me in because I was only 19 years old. And so I just started a stand-up comedy group at my college. I don't know why I thought I could do it. I just did it. And I actually met my husband there. This was in 1988. I should probably lie about that. I met my husband in 1988. My husband, Chris Oliver, and we've been together ever since. And so when as soon as I graduated from college, so basically I produced the first show I was ever in when I was 19 years old. And every year after that in college I produced shows. And when I graduated, we moved to Athens, Georgia, and I went on the road doing stand-up comedy up and down the East Coast. I've done comedy in 25 states. So for about 7 years, I saw my husband a day a week. And so I decided that I just didn't like that life, and I wanted to sleep in the same bed every night, so we moved to Los Angeles in 1997. So then, I made my way in the clubs and around the Hollywood scene, and I decided about 10 years ago that maybe I might have something to offer as doing a comedy workshop. That maybe if I started a comedy workshop, I could share something with comedians and people who wanted to be comedians. And so I started a comedy workshop, and it grew and grew and grew, and I started a large family of comedians. And now I lecture at colleges, and I have over 1,000 comedians who've studied with me, and we're a big comedy family. And my life has changed completely since then. So why am I talking to you? What can you learn from a comedian? Right? What does a comedian know that you don't know? Well, first of all, comedians know fear. Right? We know it every day. We have to face fears every day. Public speaking is the #1 fear of people. Raise your hand if you're afraid to speak in public. I am. Public speaking is except for people who I think live in war-torn areas. They're probably not lying in bed at night. Oh, PowerPoint presentations. But for most people, public speaking is terrifying. And you know what? For me too. I'm terrified to speak in public. I'm bipolar. I have OCD. I'm scared to leave the house. People terrify me. But the thing is that comedians are afraid too, but we do it anyway. And so what a comedian knows that you don't know is that fear is not an excuse not to do something. Yeah. You do it anyway. And especially if it's something you really want to do, you do it anyway. And then you find out that there is this thrill and this exhilaration that you get from doing something that scares the crap out of you that you don't get from doing something that doesn't scare you or that you don't really care about. So comedians know fear, and we know the importance of facing fear. You know, a lot of people tell themselves, oh, well, I'll speak in public, or I'll insert your own dream here, when I'm not afraid anymore. There's a difference between me and people who speak for a living, and when I'm like that, and I'm ready, and I'm not afraid anymore, I'll do that thing too. And then they go home, and they sit on their couch, and they wait for the fear to just magically go away. But that's not how fear works. Fear doesn't magically go away. Fear is not something to be squashed. It's something to be worked with. Comedians know the huge payoff in doing something that scares the crap out of you. You always learn something from the experience, even if it did turn out to be a bad experience. You always learn something from it. And then you find out, when you learn that your fears sting, but they don't kill you, that is a gift that nothing else can give you. And it will change your whole life. Comedians know you have to fail in order to succeed. You have to bomb on stage before you ever have to kill. You have to be willing to fail, and you have to give up that idea, that fear of looking stupid in front of anyone in order to lead to any success. You have to give yourself permission to make mistakes. I don't know if you know this, but Thomas Edison made 1,000 light bulbs that didn't work, and one that did. So what if he had stopped at 999? You would all be listening to me by candlelight. Or Tesla bulbs. More likely. We put all this pressure on ourselves to do the right thing and have the right answers. And if we have people who work for us, we do the same thing with our staffs. We want to do the right thing at the right time, the first time. And that's not how ideas come. You can't stop to critique every part of the process. You have to let your minds wander. Companies like Google know this. Google has their engineers spend 20% of their time just working on projects that interest them, just to see where they go. Not with the result in mind, but just the process. Let's just see where it goes. And that's how they develop new products. Focus on the process, not the result. Alan Watts, my favorite Buddhist scholar, says, the purpose of dancing is not to land on a certain spot on the floor when the music stops. The purpose of dancing is to dance. The purpose of doing whatever it is that you do for a living, or whatever it is that you do for fun or your hobbies or to live your life, it's not to get at a certain spot when the whole thing is over. It's about the process. It's about getting there. Comedians know that everything that looks easy takes practice. Good comedians go on stage and make it seem like they're just thinking of this stuff off the top of their heads. Nobody is thinking of this stuff all the time. Okay? Comedians work hours of crafting jokes and going to open mics night after night and then taking them home and recrafting them until they finally get it right. And then the audience sees the final product and goes, he's so spontaneous. Like I love gymnastics in the Olympics. Does anybody watch that?
Yep.
And they make those little triple somersaults and splits and all those complicated moves look really easy, don't they? But you know they've been in the gym for 10 hours a day since they were 5 years old with some guy named Bella. Just because something looks easy doesn't mean it doesn't take a lot of work. And just because something takes a lot of work, it doesn't mean it's not worth doing. I'm a big proponent of the 10,000 hour theory. The 10,000 hour theory states that if you want to master something, you have to devote 10,000 hours to it. That is a lot of hours and days and weeks and months and years. And if you devote 10,000 hours to something, you will probably master it. Comedians know the importance of preparation. You put in the work. You put in the 10,000 hours to get great at what you want to do. If you're afraid of public speaking, for example, and so you go and you hide in your room because you don't want to do it and you don't prepare and then you go and speak in public, you're not going to do very well at it. But if you're afraid of public speaking and so you practice a lot and you make a lot of notes and you speak in public every chance you get, you're going to be good at public speaking and you're going to get better at it every time. Comedians also know the importance of debriefing. We always go back and ask ourselves, what did we do right and what did we do wrong? We look at videotapes of ourselves, which is horrible. We listen to audio recordings of ourselves. We ask ourselves, oh, well, what happened there and what can I have done? And we know the importance of going back and critiquing yourself afterward and seeing what could have been done differently, which is a great skill to have. But it's also a great skill to have to know when it had nothing to do with you. And it wasn't your fault. And it was insurmountable. Sometimes they're just not drunk. Comedians know that finding the humor in things changes the way you think. We know that if you take something that has a power over you, a deep, dark secret or something you're terrified of, and you make a joke about it, it takes the power away from it. You guys familiar with Harry Potter, right? The books and the movies. There's this thing called the Boggart, right? And it always takes the shape of whatever you're afraid of. Whatever you're afraid of. So for you it'll be one thing, and for me it'll be a snake. And so the spell to get rid of the Boggart is ridiculous. And it takes the thing that you are the most afraid of and it turns it into something ridiculous. Something silly. And it takes away all of its power and it releases you. And when you're on stage and you tell that type of joke to an audience, it releases them too. But even if you're just writing a joke about something in your journal that nobody will ever see but you, it's still, when you start looking for the humor in things, it changes the way you think. Comedians relish this so much that we even look for new experiences so that we can make fun of them. Like if you get a jury duty summons in the mail, you're probably like, oh crap. Oh, no. But if a comedian gets a jury duty summons, we're like, yes! Good jokes! So say yes to experiences that you wouldn't normally say yes to. Challenge yourself and do things that you wouldn't normally do, and it will stimulate different areas of your brain. And if you look for the humor in it everywhere you go, always looking for the humor, then it makes you a more positive person. We take ourselves way too seriously. Yeah. We don't laugh enough. We don't play enough. And having that kind of lighthearted approach to life can really change the way you think. And it's also a good idea to hang around with people who do the same thing. Because if you're trying to be happy and look for the positive and things, and all your friends are a bunch of gossipers at the office and all super negative, it's going to be hard for you to get out of that too. Comedians know the importance of writing it out. How many people here have been to therapy? Just kidding.
Couldn't afford it.
You know, you spill your guts and you tell your therapist all your problems, and you put it all on the line, and they go,
Yeah.
Well, what I'm hearing you say is, and how does that make you feel? And you're like, well, what am I supposed to do about it? So for me and a lot of comedians, journaling is a great way to process their life and to cope with their life. They take a tragedy in their life and they write about it, and they turn it into comedy. Tragedy plus time equals comedy. So writing it out, whether it's free-form journaling, just to get up like the grocery list of crap out of your head on the page, or if you're journaling about a particular subject or time period, writing it out can be a really great mechanism. It's also really great for your job, for any other projects that you have. Brainstorming. We want everything to be we want the idea, but we don't want to go through what we have to do to get to the idea. And so there's so many steps along the way to getting the right idea. And if you cut yourself off at any of those steps, so that brainstorming, free thought journey, then you never get to the idea. I have a notebook that I carry around with me that I write down all the thoughts that are in my head. I also have a joke notebook. When I have writer's block, I have a 3-step process for writer's block. First, I journal, all the stuff that's especially when you lay in bed at night, all that stuff that's going through your head, I write that out and get it out of my head. And then I meditate for 15 minutes. And then I look for something, once I've cleared my mind and calmed myself, then I look for something to react to, something to write about, something to stimulate me. Comedians know how to think outside the box. Now, people say that a lot, right? But what does it mean? What does thinking outside the box mean? Well, comedians, we have to keep 3 things in mind. Has it been done before? I forgot what the second thing is. That we have to keep in mind. What works? Has it been done before? And who's my audience? What works? Does it get a laugh? Does it get whatever the required response is? Has it been done before? You may know from social media, on Facebook and Twitter, that every time something happens, every comedian writes a joke about it. So you can't just go with your first idea because everybody's writing the same joke. So you have to step back and say, okay, what's another angle that I can come from? What's another... what can I research this? Can I brainstorm lists about it to maybe to jog feelings about this so that I'm coming from a different angle than everyone else? And you might think you don't have an audience, but you do. Who's looking at the projects that you're doing? Who are you? Who's reading your blog? Who's listening to your podcast? Is your boss looking over your projects, or a potential employer for for something you may be presenting? Maybe a little more complex than a resume. So everyone has an audience, and while you don't want to cater to them, it's a good thing to keep them in mind. A study came out recently that found that artists tend to be mentally ill. Surprise! Artists tend to be mentally ill, and comedians are the most mentally ill. Some of them are even psychotic. But here's the funny thing about that story. One of the factors that they found to be psychotic was that comedians make connections between things that normally are not connected, and that other people would not see a connection between. So you might call that psychotic, but I call it creative. So don't be afraid to look for connections in things. When you're trying to come at something from a different angle and not go with your first thought and try to see what else is in there, you can make brainstorming lists. like I like to do, and I write down, like if I'm trying to compare two things that seemingly have nothing to do with each other, I'll make two lists. And I'll write down every word, every phrase, every thought that comes to mind, everything I've ever heard, every smell, if there's a sound or a song or anything that at all that just free form, just letting every thought, come out. And then I do it from all those things, and then I put them together and I look where there are similarities and what are the comparisons. And the world is a lot more connected than you might think.
Yeah.
So, and once you start doing that, once you start making a conscious choice to start coming at things from different angles and comparing things that wouldn't necessarily be compared, your brain starts doing that more automatically. It starts doing that quicker. There's a great book called The Tao of Physics, and the author Fritjof Capra said that all great leaps in any field come from when two different ideas that have nothing to do with each other come together. That when two fields merge that normally would have nothing to do with each other, that's when things jump way forward. For example, Taoism and comedy. Comedians know how to be the dancing monkey. You ever had to go to work when you didn't feel good?
Yes.
You had a headache, you were sick. Well, imagine if you're not a comedian, imagine if your job is to make people laugh and to be funny, and your dog just died. Or you have, don't imagine your dog just died, I'm sorry. Ask you to come back to me. Or imagine you have a migraine or something really, really bad is going on with your day, but you have to go be funny. Comedians know how to turn that side on, how to be the dancing monkey. And what I found is, when I drag myself out and force myself to go through with the thing anyway, particularly when it's going up on stage and doing comedy, being in the present moment doing that thing cheers me up.
Yeah.
And makes me feel better. And then by the end of it, I start associating being the dancing monkey with cheering myself up, with dragging myself out there and faking it. Faking it can be a really great skill. In some areas. Some I don't encourage. Particularly confidence. Let's talk about confidence for a second. Whoever our audience is, whether we're doing PowerPoint presentations or doing comedy or singing or whatever it is that we're doing, we have an audience of people who we need to trust us. We need them to trust us, to have them in our hands and take care of them, and trust themselves to go on this ride with us. And so the way we do that is we make them feel like they can trust us by acting confident and as if we are professional. So let's say I were to come out here and I'm like, it wouldn't matter what I had to say. You wouldn't go with it. You're like, what? Good thing this is free. So let's say you're afraid to do something and then you come out and you're like, then the audience is going to pick up on that and they're going to just shut you down. You're going to be like, oh, I knew I was going to be bad at it. But let's say you're terrified, okay? It doesn't matter if you feel confident or not. Let's say you're terrified and you come to whatever it is you're doing, speaking in the meeting or singing in church or whatever it is on stage, or and then you come out, you look people in the eye, you stand up straight, you say things like you mean it. They're like, oh, well, what's going on here? And they believe the narrative, and they believe that they can trust themselves with you. You know, what if you were getting on a plane and the pilot comes out and he goes, well, I think I can do it. You're getting off that plane. And let's say you're on the plane, first sign of turbulence, it's the pilot's fault, right? That's why they don't send the guy out with the "we're all gonna die" t-shirt to talk to the passengers. And sometimes, what a comedian knows, sometimes is you go into a situation that is unwinnable. And it's the absolute perfect storm of terrible places to do comedy, on terrible nights with terrible circumstances. And you're like, oh God, this is never going to go well. So you're going into an unwinnable situation. If you just accept that it's unwinnable and go through with it anyway, you usually can turn it around. I call that the enlightenment of screw it. You're just like, well, it's not going to go well anyway. I might as well just give it up. And then just by not caring, by knowing that you don't have the skills to handle every situation all the time, that's the skill you need to handle every situation all the time.
Wow. Cool.
Comedians know the importance of the pause. I have the word pause tattooed on my wrist in case I ever forget to pause. You may not be a comedian, but I bet you know that timing is everything. Timing is everything in life. Timing is everything in comedy. And a comedian knows that the timing is in the pauses. Miles Davis said, it's the notes you don't play that count. That's my dramatic pause right now. I'm going to go into this in a lot more detail later. But what I want to say is that vacations are as important as work. Sleep is as important as waking. Sometimes the best thing you can do to be more creative and more productive is to take a break, or take a nap, or take a shower. Again, Tao of Physics, Capra says that all great problems in science are solved by the comedian taking a break and leaving the lab and leaving the chalkboard and walking away and creating space, creating nothingness for the idea to move into. Everyone wants that aha moment, but you have to make room for that aha moment. You have to make space for that aha moment.
Cool. Yeah.
Here's a secret to life. If you want something, first pursue nothing. Every time you go into nothingness, you come back with something. We're going to talk more about that later. So how does one incorporate all of these things into their lives? What can we do differently than we've done before to get new results that we haven't gotten before? How can we create, be more creative, be more prolific, and less anxious? When I lived in Athens, Georgia, before I moved to Los Angeles, the University of Georgia radio station used to play a speaker by the name of Alan Watts every Sunday morning. Alan Watts is a scholar and a public speaker. He's a theologian, he passed away many years ago. He was a theologian, but he was particularly interested in Eastern philosophy. And he was particularly interested in Zen Buddhism and Taoism. So I'm from a trailer park in Georgia. I didn't know from Zen. But he was so captivating and such a funny speaker that I loved listening to him every week. And the more I listened to him, the more I realized, the more I got interested in these philosophies. In a philosophy that could not be more different than where I was from and how I was raised. And I realized that it was a way to experience life, and a different way to experience life. So I read everything I could read by Alan Watts. I started reading other books on Zen and Taoism. There's this great book called The Tao of Pooh, which explains Taoism through Winnie the Pooh. And I learned through that, it's by Benjamin Hoff, I learned through that I don't have to be depressed Eeyore all the time. And I don't have to be wisdom-obsessed owl all the time. That I could find my Pooh nature. Which Taoism they call the uncarved block. In Buddhism they call it the Buddha nature. And so think about it. Winnie the Pooh doesn't lie in bed at night and worry about where his next pot of honey's coming from. There are no stories of Winnie the Pooh worried about, do people like him? Is he ever going to make any money? But he always has plenty of honey and adventures and friends. Always. So that's what we're looking to get back to, our Pooh nature. I didn't know anything about it, but I knew I was unhappy. And I knew I was unfulfilled. I knew I was stifled in my writing, and I was feeling uncreative and bored. And then I discovered Eckhart Tolle, The Power of Now. And I realized that most people, I didn't realize, I learned from this philosophy. I was the first person to ever think of this. I discovered that most people are going through their lives asleep, and they don't even know it. We're just going around lost in the thoughts in our heads, and we're living our lives from the neck up. And we never even stop to question, is that thing we hear in our head all the time really us? We identify with the voice in our head. You're no more the voice in your head than you are your foot. Do you go around, this is me. And what I found out through Eckhart Tolle and through Alan Watts and other readings is that the path into yourself, the doorway is the now. The doorway is this moment, this present moment. So cut to years later when I'm teaching stand-up comedy, and I knew how to do comedy, but I didn't really know how to tell people what I do. And every time somebody asked me a question about persona, or material, or joke writing, or the business of comedy, or anything at all, I find myself answering them in things I'd learned in Eastern philosophy. Because it seemed to me that that was the most organic way to be an artist. The least contrived way to create. And what I came to realize is that I was doing and teaching the Tao of comedy. And didn't even know it. Am I talking about religion? No, I'm not. I'm talking about a philosophy or philosophies. Zen Buddhism and Taoism are very similar. Zen is Japanese and Taoism is Chinese. And the point behind them all is to change the way you experience life. We all have a voice in our head that is running all the time and usually criticizing us, right? Oh, just me? And so, the voice can be voluntary and it can be involuntary. And the voice exists for when we need to think. We're supposed to utilize that voice when we need to think and problem solve, and then we are to put it away when we no longer use it, when we no longer need it. But the voice is like a radio that has had the knob ripped off of it, and it can't be silenced. And so the human condition is that now we all walk around with the voice going all the time, 24/7, and we don't even know that that's a thing. We're not even aware that this is not us. We hear it in our head, so it must be us. It's random firings of things in the brain. It's not your true self. So we're walking around the world and the voice is constantly going, and the world is constantly going, and our feelings and our jobs and our careers and our phone and the internet and da-da-da, and the world is shouting at you. But the universe is whispering to you. But you can't hear it because of the voice.
Yeah.
So when I say comedians know the importance of the pause, I'm not just talking about the pause on stage. I'm talking about meditation, mindfulness, being present in this moment, and accessing who you really are underneath it all. I'm sure you've heard before that we aren't human beings having a spiritual experience.
Yeah.
We're spirits having a human experience. And so the source of creativity is that thing underneath it all. So Tao means the way, and it also means the true nature of things. And it's also referred to as the energy that's underneath it all. So it's kind of like the Force in Star Wars. May the Tao be with you. But that source of creativity, have you ever heard a painter say, oh, I don't know where this came from. I just moved the brush the way I was, or Michelangelo, God did that, But What it is it's tapping into that creative source. Tapping into that authentic voice that is you, that is underneath it all. And people say, oh, be yourself. What does that mean? Do you know who yourself is? I mean, this person that's criticizing me all the time in my mind, I hope that's not me. Be yourself. I mean, what yourself is you are creativity.
Yes.
You are the spirit that creates. And so if you try to create from the voice, and you try to create from your ego, which is another word for the voice, you're trying always to think of ideas and struggling, and you're giving yourself that wrinkle in the middle. But if you need to come up with a great idea, or when I was writing this speech and I was like really stuck on where I'm going, I would go and meditate for a few minutes. Or at one point I went and said, I'm going to take a 15-minute nap. And then when I came back, the ideas started flowing again. So that's really what we're talking about. We're talking about having a direct experience with life. Without the middleman, without the narrator. I walked into a comedy club bathroom once and the voice in my head said, it's cold in here. Why did I need a voice to tell me it's cold in here? I have skin for that. So we go through life and we're just all the time. Somebody walks by, we're like, oh, that girl, you know. And we're never just really just seeing things that are actually in front of us. We're like the Terminator where you walk in and like the screen comes up with all the information you know about it. And you're not really experiencing the thing. We're lost in thought. Buddha means he who woke up.
Wow.
So what we're doing is we are waking up together right now.
Thank you.
Does anybody remember that TV show Mystery Science Theater 3000?
Yeah.
These comedians would sit in a movie theater and they would watch a B movie with the sound down and they would make fun of it and criticize it and play with it. So you, the viewer, you didn't actually see the movie. You just saw their version of the movie, right? You just saw how they were describing it and making fun of it. So what I'm saying is, shut up and watch the movie. When you pass a tree, you glance at a tree and then you walk on, you don't see that tree. You didn't stop and look at it. You saw every tree you ever saw, you ever sat under, you ever climbed, and you're not even like, stop. I've made myself before go, stop and look at it. Look, be present in this experience right now, in this moment, without this narrator, without this translator, as if I needed any translation into my own life. Alan Watts says, Zen is a method of rediscovering the experience of being alive. The aim of Zen is to bring about a transformation of consciousness and to awaken from the dream world of our endless thoughts that we experience life in the present moment. He also says the secret to Taoism is to get out of one's own way. And to learn that this pushing ourselves, instead of making us more efficient, actually interferes with everything we set about to do.
Wow.
So whether you realize it or not, everything you do in your life, everything you set about to do, you're making a choice. Whether you realize it or not. And that choice is, am I going to use this as one more thing that the voice tortures me with? Or am I going to use this as a path to find out who I really am? Eckhart Tolle said, life can be hell, or it can be a spiritual experience. People can be hell, or they can be a spiritual experience. Your job, your art, comedy, whatever it is, can be hell, or you can use it as a path inward to find out who you really are underneath it all, and what you want to do, and what you want to express, and what you really care about. So how can you do all of this? How can you make your art and your work a spiritual path to who you really are and have a direct experience with life? So when I figured out that I was doing the Tao of Comedy and teaching the Tao of Comedy, I decided to make it more purposeful. And I started reading as much as I could again. And I picked out a few components in Zen and Taoism that I think really work well for our purposes, for the Tao of Comedy. So there are 5 things that I have drawn from Eastern philosophy that I want to share with you on the Tao of Creativity. The first one is called suchness. And suchness means the way things are. The true nature of things. We spend our whole life, we waste so much time and energy fighting the way things are. But they shouldn't be that way. Well, they are. I'm 5 feet 2 inches tall. Maybe I wanted to be 6 feet tall. Maybe I wanted to play on the NBA. I'm still 5 feet 2 inches tall. And so I either need to look for an application. I need to look for a different occupation. So I'm going to apply to the NBA already. Does anybody got an application? Is that what you're saying? So I either have to look for a different occupation than professional basketball player, or I need to get really good at moving the ball, and really good at blocking, and really good at shooting, because you know what? I'm never going to slam dunk. Never. So I work with the way things are. That is the way things are. The entire 8 years I was in college, I never took an 8 a.m. class. Ever. Because I know my true nature. And if Bobbie took an 8 a.m. class, Bobbie's failing an 8 a.m. class. And so I know that the way things are is that I'm not a morning person. And let's say I was forced to take an 8 a.m. class, knowing I'm not a morning person, I need to go to bed at night. Then I need to work with the way things are. A lot of people say to write, you have to get up first thing in the morning. I have so many quotes in my book, and people say get up at 9 in the morning and write. And I wrote at 2 o'clock in the morning because that's my true nature. That's who I am. If I tried to get up and walk at 9, I exercise almost every day. If I tried to do it at 6 o'clock in the morning, like they tell you to do, it would never happen. So accepting the way things are. We have this idea that accepting something means approving of it. Radical acceptance is not a seal of approval. It's looking at things realistically and seeing what actually exists in front of us. It's like a starting point on the map to say this is where you are. Now you might not like where you are, but if you just stand there all day and deny where you are, you're never going to be able to figure out how to get anywhere else. So accepting something, that doesn't mean you don't want to change it. That doesn't mean you won't change it. But what it does mean is that you see it for what it really is right now in front of you instead of spending all of your time trying to deny it and make it a thing that cannot go away. You spend all of your time flailing around in a current that will eventually exhaust you and you will drown. When gay and trans people come out of the closet, you often hear them use terms like living their own truth. Living their truth, not lying about who they really are. The same is true for kids who go to the schools their parents want them to go to and study the things their parents want them to study, and they end up failing out because it wasn't something that they wanted to study. So when you live your own truth, you get this power that you don't get when all your energy is spent living a lie. I'm an NBA star. That's a lot. It takes a lot of energy for me to maintain that. So what I'm saying is they were not being authentic. And when you're not being authentic, you will not succeed.
Yeah.
And if you do succeed on some level, it's never going to be in here. You're never going to feel that happiness, that joy in here. The transformation that's made in people's lives when they finally get the courage to exclaim their true selves to the world is remarkable. They have a power they didn't possess before. Not accepting the true nature of themselves was using up all of their energy. In my comedy workshops, I encourage my comedians to embrace themselves 100%. Their flaws, their weaknesses, their fears, and to work with it. When you accept a weakness that you have and then work with it, it becomes your strengths. There was this young man, a gypsy, who was a jazz guitarist named Django Reinhardt. And he was so good, by the time he was 18, he was renowned as a guitarist. And then he had an accident in a fire and lost 3 of his fingers. everyone was really heartbroken because he'd already become so good. And so what he did, instead of giving up the guitar, is he invented new fingering methods. And he found chord progressions that nobody had ever found before. He completely revolutionized jazz guitaring. He completely revolutionized the jazz guitar, and every jazz guitarist who came after him was influenced by him.
Wow.
And that never would have happened had he not had that accident and not lost 3 of his fingers.
Wow.
So he took something and he could have just said, oh, why is this like this? Why did I lose 3 fingers? Why? Okay, you did. You did. That's the way things are. Now you know where you're starting from.
Yes.
And now you also know where you can go. The second one, so that's suchness, the way things are and the true nature of things. And the second one is wu wei. And what that means is go with the flow. Get out of your own way. Going with the flow basically means working with what life gives us. Once we identify the way things are, the starting point, we start from there and work with what we have instead of fighting the whole way and wasting our energy. Wu wei refers to not forcing or interfering. Letting things play out as they naturally would instead of trying to control it. Have you ever had something you really, really wanted to happen, and so you get involved, and you start messing with it, and you start, and your very actions cause the thing not to happen?
Yeah.
There's no people my age in here to have had that experience. So basically, wu wei, going with the flow, means get out of it. Just let things go the way they're going to go. Because you interfering in it is actually pushing things away from you. We have this idea that life is supposed to be this way, and it's supposed to be that way. And then when it's not, we lose our minds. You know, sometimes the best way to fight the power is within the power structure itself. If that's what you got to work with, that's what we're going to work with. Alan Watts explains going with the flow is letting life unfold without interference and without forcing matters when the time is not right. It's called the principle of minimal effort. Stop trying so hard to figure it all out and get it right and just go with it. Paddle with the current. Don't fight against it or you will drown. There's an old Zen story where a young man watches an old man fall into a waterfall. And the old man is like, oh my God. And he runs over to the bottom where the waterfall comes out to collect the old man's body. And the old man gets up and walks out. He's like, oh my God, how did you do that? And the old man said, I know I'm not stronger than the water, so I didn't fight it. I let it take me where it wanted to take me, and when it was done, I got up and walked out. You ever been in the ocean and you feel that undercurrent and you're trying to get away from it and you're trying to, now what are you doing? You're basically exhausting yourself and you can end up drowning. But if you swim with the current, you might not come back right on the place of shore where you intended to, but you're going to get to the shore without drowning yourself by swimming with the current. Most of you know Stephen Hawking. Stephen Hawking is an astrophysicist who has Lou Gehrig's disease. He can't speak. He uses a wheelchair. He talks with the assistance of computers. But I saw his biography, and it said that before he got Lou Gehrig's disease, he was really lazy and unproductive. And then when he found out he had it, he said to himself, I only have a certain amount of time before I lose all my faculties. I'm going to learn as much as I can now and work as hard as I can now and do as much as I can now before it all goes away. And he became an author, a professor, an astrophysicist. Wow. Boy, am I a loser. But let's say he never got that disease. He might still be lazy and unproductive, Stephen Hawking, who you may have never heard of. Circumstances are rarely ideal. Plans and projects change. Don't fight it. Going with the flow is simply being organic, natural, not contrived, not forcing. Everything is changing all the time. Pay attention. We tend to react to change with denial and resistance. People hate change until it's the status quo, and then they were for it the whole time. Yeah, change is confusing and scary, but if you live through the not knowing, then you will know.
Yes.
And the only thing constant in this world is change. The third one is stillness, nothingness, meditation, and mindfulness. Most of us walk around asleep, lost in thought, living our lives, as I said, from the neck up. Stillness is about creating space, focusing on the now, being in the present moment, not living in the past or the future. So like the voice is supposed to be used when we need it and discarded when we don't, so is the past and the future. You utilize them when you need to think about them, and then when you don't, you're supposed to put them away. You're thinking about the past and the future right now. That's all we think about. We live our whole lives that way. We're like, oh, when so-and-so happens, I'll be happy then. Well, if you're not happy now, when that thing that you want to happen happens, guess when it's going to happen? Now. Because when you're in the future, guess what? You're in the now again. And so if you don't know how to be happy in the now, when the now is here and that thing is here, you're still not happy with it. You're like, they're going to take it away from me. And you're always focused on it. Or you're always thinking about the past there, or pining over, oh, remember when we used to have that? Or, oh, God, here's my favorite thing to do. Drive in the car and think about everything stupid I ever said to anybody my whole life. Remember that time in '89? Oh, my God. Don't you? And fear is the projection of the past onto the future. They made fun of me in 7th grade when I presented my science fair project. Therefore, they're going to hate my PowerPoint presentation at work next week. Or therefore, my singing debut is going to bomb. Or I can't do comedy. Or I can't do whatever thing it is because that thing didn't go well that one time. And fear is about what might happen, what could happen. You know what? Let's say something terrible did happen. You can't pre-cope. You literally cannot cross a bridge until you come to it. Because you ever planned out what was going to happen, what you were going to say, and what they were going to say, and then it happened, they didn't say that. And then everything just fell apart from there. You can never plan out how it's going to go. So the best thing you can do is prepare for the future and then let it go. And then when you're in the future, be in the present. And whatever is happening, you can deal with because you're in the present. Because if you spend your whole time thinking about the past and the future and never spending your time thinking about the moment or being in the present moment, you're going to wake up 30 years from now and realize you missed the whole thing. You missed the whole thing. In sports, they call it being in the zone, being in the present moment. Yogi Berra said, how can you think and hit at the same time? Don't think, hit. There is no room for thinking in the present moment. Alan Watts said, you can even sweep the floor in a Zen way by focusing on the sweeping and not thinking your way through it. There's sitting meditation, there's lying meditation, there's moving meditation. Yoga and Tai Chi are moving meditation. There's cleaning your house meditation. If you're not thinking your way through it. You know, I wanted to go back. I forgot to tell you something about fear that I really love this quote a lot, and I wanted to share it with you even though I had moved on. Eleanor Roosevelt said, you must do the thing you think you cannot do. You gain strength, courage, and confidence every time you stop and look fear in the face. You say to yourself, well, I lived through that. I can take the next thing that comes along. You must do the thing you think you cannot do. I just find that to be a very powerful quote. I wanted to make sure that I shared it with you. So, how do you meditate? How do you focus on the moment? Well, one trick is by doing one thing at a time. Give everything you are doing your complete attention. In my comedy workshops, I talk about how can you write any material that hasn't already been done to death? Every idea you ever had, George Carlin and Richard Pryor already did 30 minutes on it. But what you can do is you can be present in your experience so that you are noticing the subtle nuances in things that other comedians aren't noticing because they're just living their life in their head. That's my background drummer. Making sure I keep with the beat. Not being in the now is the biggest source of your anxiety and fear. And it interferes the most with your performance and creativity. Remember I said earlier, in order to find yourself, you have to seek? The seeking is in the being in the moment, in the being quiet, in the listening and waiting and experiencing, and then that next idea pops up. You ever notice you have a lot of ideas in the shower? It's not just because you don't have a pen. It's also because you're relaxed. You're in a relaxed state, and all of these ideas just flow from you.
Just coming back.
I know, I'm like. For people who are new to meditation, all it means is being present. You don't have to travel to some distant plane and try to become some spiritual guru. You don't have to sit cross-legged and chant Om. Although you can. And I think the beat would go great with that right now. You're simply bringing your attention to this moment right here by finding something to focus on. Being present is called mindfulness. A simple way to practice mindfulness is to stop multitasking. Stop multitasking at home, stop multitasking at work. Studies have proven that multitasking does not make you more productive. It makes you less productive. It just means you're screwing up two things at the same time. So anytime you're at home and you are watching TV and playing on your phone, or you're eating and reading, stop and do just one of those things. If you realize you're walking through life, you're looking down at your phone, put it away and look up. Look up. Live your life. Every time we do multiple things at once, we're splitting ourselves from the moment. When you are talking to someone and you realize you've gone away for a moment, you come back, you have no idea what they're talking about. Good, it's not just me. You're going away and coming back, and every time you catch yourself thinking, that's a moment of enlightenment. When we meditate in my workshops, and I'm going to teach you a quick meditation in a minute, when we meditate in my workshops, people go, oh, I kept thinking. I kept thinking. I'm like, did you catch yourself? And they're like, yeah. And I'm like, that's enlightenment. So every time you catch yourself thinking, you are no longer lost in thought. You are no longer thought. You are the thing that is aware that you think.
Yes. Yes.
You are aware that you are aware. You know that you know. And in that moment, you are the thing that's underneath it all. And so the more you do that, and the more you stop multitasking and bring yourself back to, I'm going to show you some things, you can bring yourself back to just your hand. Or a water bottle or a coffee cup. Slow down the moment. Zero in your focus, and that turns off the voice in the head. When you are completely focused on what you are doing in front of you, the voice stops. And when the voice stops, the universe surrenders. So, you're not trying to create. You are the vessel for creativity.
Yes. Yes. Yes.
You become the vessel for the creativity to come through you. But if you're just all in your head and all you're like, what do I write about? What do I do? You have to come back to that nothingness. Do you have a goal? Great. Goals are fine. You should have a goal. But while your eyes are on the prize, keep your feet in the now. Whatever that goal is, there are things you have to do right now to get to it. And then when you do that, then you go to the next thing, and then you're in that, and then you're in that. And so you focus on the process, not the result. Not the carrot at the end of the stick. Here's another secret. The carrot is always at the end of the stick. The stick never gets shorter. So whenever you catch yourself thinking about the past and the future, do something like listen to your own breath. Or watch the wind blow the trees. And focus on what you're doing right now. All the anxiety that you have is in the past or in the present. And when you are here right now, when you're fully present right now, it is the doorway to yourself, the secret to joy, and the cessation of anxiety. Let's say this moment right now sucks. Let's say you're at the dentist, my favorite place. Let's say you're at the dentist and you're in a lot of pain and your tooth is really killing you. What's your instinct? Distract myself. Think of something else. Oh my God, I can't handle this pain. It's too much. I have to distract myself with something else. Run into the pain. Don't run away from the pain. Think about the pain. Become curious about the pain. Lay there and go, which tooth is it? Is it a sharp pain? Is it a dull pain? Do I feel the drill? Which of my teeth don't hurt? If I had to describe this pain, would it be heavy? Would it be light? Would it have a color? And so now, rather than beating pain and building up a whole dramatic story around pain, oh my God, I can't cope with the pain. You're actually feeling it, becoming curious about it. You are the thing that is aware of the pain. You are no longer pain. You are the thing that is aware of the pain. And what you find out is the pain is a lot easier to deal with than the whole story you made up about it. So ease into meditation and mindfulness simply by focusing on what's happening. Pay attention to your life. Wake up. Focus on the process of everything you're doing, not the result. If you don't like the word meditation, you can call it unthinking. If you take time to unthink every day, your creativity and productivity increase exponentially with little effort. Embrace the pause. Everything comes from nothingness. Great comedians know the importance of the pause. Musicians know the importance of the pause. This is it. This moment is it. And if you pay attention, it's full of awe. So before I go to the last two things, I want to teach you a quick little breathing exercise. And we have the drum beat to keep us going. And because people think of meditation as this big, crazy, scary thing sometimes, and there are lots of different kinds of meditation, and there are lots of different things you can do, but this is a really quick breathing exercise you can do if you're about to go on stage, you're about to have to speak in public, you're going into a job interview, and you need to calm down, or you just want to make space in your brain to tap into the source and create. This is a really simple one that you can do that's in Eckhart Tolle's book, The Power of Now. So I want everybody to close your eyes. It's okay that there's music going on because that's what's happening in the now. Okay? Yeah. So what I want you to do, first of all, is feel what it feels like to be present in the room. Feel your feet on the floor. Feel your butt and back on the sofa. I was going to say listen to the drums, but they may have stopped. Listen to any sounds you may hear, any smells. Feel the air on your skin. Don't think, feel. Now bring your attention to your breath. What does it feel like to breathe in and out? Where do you feel it in your body? Is it in your chest or your throat? Focus on breathing in and out. Now let's try to make our breathing a little more purposeful. want to make our inhales a little longer, slower, and deeper, and our exhales match in length. Every time you start thinking, bring yourself back to slowing your breath down. Okay. It's kind of like a little trip to Hawaii. You know, studies show that people who don't take breaks and don't go on vacation and never take days off are less productive. Making room for the space, making room for the pause, is not just as important as everything else you're doing. It's more important than everything else you're doing. And if you have people that work with you and you tell them not to go on lunch and you tell them not to take their breaks, you're going to get a lot less out of them. And the quality of work is going to be not very good. So we have two more things that we're going to talk about, and the next one is the yin-yang. And that represents duality. In Zen and Taoism, they say that everything implies its own opposite. You wouldn't know up if you didn't know down. You wouldn't understand left if there was no right. In fact, light is going on, off, on, off, on, off, light, dark, all the time. People who are tone deaf can't hear the space between notes. So everything is all the time, all the time, all the time. And yet we want a world where it's all good and no evil. And all happiness and no sadness. All exhilaration with no fear. But the nature of things is that there are two sides to every coin. And you cannot have a world that is only up. So we have all these experiences and we decide, well, this is a bad experience and that is a good experience. Based on what? Based on us deciding it? How many people here have had a really terrible thing happen to them? They thought it was the worst thing that ever happened and something great ended up coming out of it. Right? You moved to a different place or you met a different person and it ended up changing the course of your entire life and you think, God, I can't go. If I went back and changed that, none of this other stuff would have happened. What if Chris had gotten into that school he wanted to go to instead of coming to college and meeting me? And I'm sure you've heard that a lot of people have won the lottery and it ruined their whole lives. How many of those stories have you heard? It ruined their whole lives. And so we divide things up in our mind and we want things to be all happy, sunshine, you know. But there is no one without the other. And we think something is good or we think something is bad, but really it's all just information. And a comedian knows that you learn more from the bad shows than you do the good shows. You learn to have a better show next time. Every figure has a background. But we've decided the figure is more important than the background. But you can't have one without the other. The Tao Te Ching says, being and non-being create each other. Difficult and easy support each other. Long and short define each other. High and low depend on each other. So not only does something implies its own opposite, but they're interdependent. They need each other in order to exist. You need it to rain sometimes. We in California know you need it to rain
Yeah.
sometimes to appreciate the sunshine. Everything is cyclical. What goes around comes around. And then the final thing is day, which is spelled T-E. So Tao is spelled T-A-O and day is spelled T-E. And the term day refers to the silent power you get in your life when you follow the Tao. Day is the living of human life in such a fashion as to not get in its own way. Follow the path of least resistance and suffer the least resistance. Open yourself up to the universe and let it create through you. So if it's increased creativity you seek or just a release from anxiety, accept the way things are and the true nature of things. Go with the flow. Don't interfere or force your will on everything. Create space in your life and live in the present moment as often as possible.
Yes.
Understand duality. Accept that everything implies its own opposite and you can't have one without the other. Day is more creativity, better productivity, more opportunities, better morale, more success and profits. Day is everything, always working out in the end. Day is Winnie the Pooh, always having plenty of honey and adventures and friends. Thank you very much. But for our purposes, I just did not want to leave without asking if anyone had any question about anything that I did not clarify or that you would be more interested in. I do, if you're interested, my book, The Tao of Comedy, although it is written for comedians and comedy fans, it shows you how to do things like write a joke about something that's really painful to you, and it talks really in depth about all these things I talked about: meditation, nothingness, your true nature, and all of those things. So if anybody wants to get the book or wants to ask me any questions or talk to me after or anything, then I'm totally cool with that. So thank you very much. Did you have a question?
I wanted to ask you, if you're not a comedian, but you're still an artist in some fashion.
Right.
Yes.
Would that book still be helpful in the sense that to make a joke out of something that might have been painful?
I had an aneurysm. I lived by that book.
Right, she's like she had a stroke and now she has a whole new act about having a stroke. A
Everybody
whole
ought to
new-
have a stroke.
Right. That's her speech. Next week we'll come and Courtney will tell everybody how they have to have a stroke. That'll be the stroke speech. But I've had people write, I'm very lucky, this book's been out a year, and I'm very lucky in that, it hasn't sold 1 million copies, but almost everyone who buys it finds some way to contact me.
It's so influential.
They get it means a lot to me to hear that. They get my number online, they contact me and they say, this book got me through chemotherapy. Or I was having a procedure and the doctor was like, why are you so calm? And he was like, I was doing the exercises you taught me. So, so it was written for anybody who wants to use Taoism and Zen Buddhism to open up their creativity. It does have particular examples of how to write jokes in it, but it also is a lot about what we were talking about today.
Can I give a testimony?
You don't have to be a comedian
Yeah.
to use humor and,
Exactly.
and
Right.
find humor. And
That's true.
I found that often sort of breaks the ice.
Right, right.
And you're also, whatever your medium is, the same ideas can apply.
Yeah.
This is how you can do it through painting or music.
And you may not call yourself an artist, But you have to create at work. You have to
Yeah.
create in your life. You're constantly looking for ideas and looking for new ways to come at things. And so basically this is saying, this is using comedy as a spiritual path, but you can use anything as a spiritual path. You know, when I do my comedy workshops, people come up here and they do their act for me, and then I give them, I'm just writing the whole time. I'm writing, I'm listening, I'm figuring out what they just said, what part of the joke could be fixed, how could it be fixed, and then I'm writing down all while they're telling the second joke, and I'm doing all that, and then people are like, how do you do that? How did you come up with the most detailed feedback? And I'm like, I paid attention. I was really present in the moment. I don't think, oh God, how can I say something funny? What if I don't think of something funny and they're paying me to be funny and I don't think it's a... If I do that, then I'm correct. But then I go, all right, I'm just going to be really present in this experience with them. I'm going to watch what they're doing. And you know what? I mean, I'm kind of an atheist, but God done it. You know what I'm saying? Like that thing that is under it, that's who's giving them the feedback.
You know what has helped me to do? Everybody needs a muse. This has helped me to become my own muse.
Exactly.
You know?
Exactly.
Find the funny within you and share it. Or find the music or the lyrics or whatever you need. That's what it helped me to do. Find the funny in me and share it 3 times sometimes. But I do it.
Or maybe realize, hey, I went on this career path because that's what my parents told me to do, or that's where I thought the most money was, but you know what? I'm not really very happy in this.
Right.
And maybe I have some skill that I didn't know I had because I never stopped to listen to my true self. I never stopped to listen to the authentic voice underneath it all. Like, turns out I'm handy. I can build stuff now. I never knew I could do that. I never knew I could do that, but I had an idea to make the air conditioner cover outside because I didn't like the way it looked, and I didn't know how I was going to do it, but I said, if I just start doing it, I'll figure it out on the way. And then after it was done, I told myself, I'm handy. I started being handy because I told myself that. You ever told yourself, oh, I can't do that? And then guess what? You can't do that. Any other questions? You guys are so great. I know I made a lot of mistakes. I know I forgot a lot of stuff.
Beautiful.
And it was weird kind of taking what I usually say about comedy and trying to apply it to everyone. But I appreciate y'all letting me go through this this dress rehearsal together. So thank you very, very much.